My psycho older brother framed me for a severe felony, and now that my life is ruined, he's back wanting to be best friends again. My older brother convinced me to be abusive, so I listened. I was 12 and my brother was about to move out for college when my mom discovered that the eggs she had frozen had completely degenerated. She couldn't have another baby. "Mom, I don't want a sibling. Am I not enough for you?" I asked instinctively. She would always try to reassure me that I was enough for her, but still, I hoped every night that she'd never be able to adopt. And a few months later, she was asked to babysit a baby called Daisy. You see, her friend had opened her door one day to find a child completely unclothed and left crying at her front door. She had no idea where it had come from and couldn't take care of it due to having 3 toddlers of her own. And because my mom is known for being generous and stuff, she asked if she could babysit Daisy for the night until CPS came to pick her up. My mom agreed, and we both loved the baby so much that we ended up adopting her and accepting her into our family. At first, I loved her. She was 3 and so much fun to play with. I taught her how to tie her own lace and build blanket forts. We even had multiple handshakes that only we knew. It honestly felt like the sibling I never had, because even though I technically had a brother, he effing hated me. When I was a child and wanted to play with him, he'd hit me until I left him alone. He'd constantly break every new toy I got to teach me how to be tough. And instead of telling our mom, I just let it happen for years, because I saw him as such a role model that I wanted his approval more than anything. So now having a built-in friend who I felt safe and comfortable with meant everything to me, until one day when Trevor pulled me aside. He asked me if I noticed anything different about Daisy in comparison to me and him. She's a lot funnier? My voice was innocent, unknowing. No, she's a dirty N-word and we can't be around her. His tone was cold and unforgiving. Daisy was African American while we were white Americans. I furrowed my eyebrows and tilted my head, so he continued. You see, people like her are always angry, always ready to commit violence. You don't want mom to be hurt, do you? I shook my head violently and he nodded. Except there's one thing. Adults don't like when boys hit girls, so you have to be the one to do it. I started tearing up, not liking the glimpse of the adult world I thought I was getting. But that's when my brother did something so unexpected that it instantly changed everything. He gave me a hug and said, "I'm proud of you. You have to be strong." In response, I smiled super hard and hugged him back. That's when we heard our mom's footsteps. He pushed me off and pretended like nothing happened. And since I had nothing better to do, I returned to playing with Daisy. I didn't really know how to follow my brother's advice or what exactly he wanted me to do, so I just listened to what I thought was my intuition. But it was really just my developing anger issues. Whenever Daisy didn't do what I'd say, I'd pinch her arm until she cried. And when she talked to my mom, I'd pull her aside and tell her our mom secretly hates her. And the more she talks, the more she'll want to bring her to the orphanage. This always shut her up straight away. And by the time she turned 4, she was a complete shell of who she used to be. Hated playing, always wanted to be alone, did everything she could to please me. And the worse I treated her, the nicer my brother was to me. He'd tell me that I was saving the family, that I was protecting mom. And as much as I hate to admit it, deep down I knew it was wrong. But the nicer my brother treated me, the more it seemed like morals just didn't really matter. But then came Daisy's breaking point. Or rather, my breaking point. One day, she came home to all of her toys being completely broken, because I had done the same thing as my brother always did to me. Usually our mom was so busy that she never even noticed what was going on. But that day she came home early, and Daisy was crying so loudly I knew it was going to make her suspicious. So I hit her, again and again, until her tiny self was covered in injuries. When she was quiet, I breathed a sigh of relief until red started dripping on the floor. And that's when our mom walked in with a plate of apples and grapes. As soon as she saw us, her face went ghost white and she screamed. I was so scared of what her reaction would be that I didn't even notice Daisy had passed out beside me. Then my brother walked in. "Why did you make me do this? I effing hate you!" I yelled while my mom tried to dial 911. I don't even know why I expected him to be honest. He turned to my mom and said, "She's dangerous." Except this time she was talking about me, not Daisy. When the ambulance arrived, they prioritized saving Daisy. But when as they brought her to the hospital, I saw it. The flashing red and blue lights. It was the police. They took me in and questioned me. But I could tell they weren't believing a word I said. And when they left to talk to my mom, my fears were immediately confirmed. Because that's when I saw one of the officers hugging Trevor and congratulating him on being the man of the house. He smirked. He smirked. I spent that night in juvenile detention. It was the scariest night of my life. The room was cold and empty with just a thin mattress on a metal frame. I couldn't sleep at all. I just kept thinking about Daisy's face when I hit her. I kept seeing the blood on the floor, bright red against the beige carpet. I kept hearing my mom scream, high-pitched and terrified. And I kept feeling Trevor's hug when he told me he was proud of me. The next morning, a woman named Ms. Barbara came to talk to me. She said she was my caseworker. She had these really thick glasses and spoke super slowly like I wouldn't understand her otherwise. She asked me a bunch of questions about what happened with Daisy. I told her everything. About Trevor telling me to hurt Daisy because of her skin color. About him breaking my toys when I was little. About how I just wanted him to be nice to me. Ms. Barbara wrote everything down in this little notebook with a floral cover. Her face didn't change much, but I noticed her grip on her pen getting tighter, her knuckles turning white. When I finished talking, she just nodded and said she needed to speak with some people. Then she left me alone again, the door closing with a heavy thud behind her. Later that day, they moved me to a different facility. This one had other kids my age. The building was larger, with common areas and a cafeteria that smelled like overcooked vegetables. I didn't talk to any of them. I just sat in a corner and tried to make myself invisible, pulling my knees up to my chest and staring at the floor. A boy named Kendall tried to talk to me during lunch, but I just stared at my food tray. I couldn't eat anything. My stomach felt like it was tied in knots. The mashed potatoes and mystery meat looked like something from a nightmare. 3 days passed before I saw my mom again. When she walked into the visiting room, I burst into tears. I ran to hug her, but she didn't hug me back right away. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually neat hair disheveled, her clothes wrinkled. Eventually, she put her arms around me, but it felt different, hesitant, like she was afraid of me, like I was a stranger she didn't recognize anymore. She told me Daisy was going to be okay physically. She had a concussion and some bruises, but nothing permanent. I felt relieved, but still sick to my stomach. Mom said Daisy was staying with her friend Julia for now. Then she told me something that made my heart stop. Trevor had shown her text messages where I supposedly told him I was planning to hurt Daisy. Messages I never sent. Messages that painted me as some kind of monster who had been plotting this for weeks. I never wrote those, Mom. Trevor made those up. I was practically shouting. A guard looked over at us, his hand moving to rest on his belt. Mom shushed me and said we needed to stay calm. She said Trevor had shown the police the messages too. That's why they were treating him like a hero. He had reported me before things got worse. According to him, he had been trying to talk me out of hurting Daisy for weeks. I couldn't believe it. Trevor had set me up completely. He had planned this whole thing from the beginning. Get me to hurt Daisy, then make it look like it was all my idea. And everyone believed him because he was older, because he was about to go to college, because he was the responsible one, the perfect son who was just trying to protect his little adopted sister from his troubled middle sister. After Mom left, I sat in my room trying to figure out what to do. I needed someone to believe me, but who would take the word of a 12-year-old who had already admitted to hurting a 4-year-old? I felt completely trapped. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, counting the water stains and trying not to cry. The next day, Ms. Barbara came back. This time she brought a man named Dr. Peter. He said he was a child psychologist. He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and spoke in a gentle voice that made me feel a little less scared. They took me to a room with comfortable chairs and asked if I would talk to them again. I nodded, feeling numb. Dr. Peter asked me to start from the beginning, not just about Daisy, but about Trevor too. So I did. I told them about how Trevor had treated me my whole life, about the toys he broke, about the times he hit me when no one was looking, about how he made me feel like I needed his approval more than anything. I told them about the first time he broke my favorite doll, ripping its head off and laughing when I cried. I told them about how he would pinch me under the dinner table if I talked too much, leaving little bruises that no one ever noticed. As I talked, Dr. Peter kept nodding and writing things down. Sometimes he'd ask me to explain something more clearly or give more details. I noticed Ms. Barbara was recording our conversation on her phone, the little red light blinking steadily as I poured out my story. When I finished, Dr. Peter asked me something that surprised me. Do you think Trevor might have been jealous of your relationship with Daisy? I hadn't thought about that before, but it made sense. Trevor never had the kind of connection with me that I had with Daisy. Maybe he wanted to destroy it. Maybe he couldn't stand seeing me happy with someone else when I had always been so desperate for his attention. After our talk, they took me back to my room. That night, I actually slept a little. Something about telling my whole story made me feel less alone with it, like maybe someone might actually believe me. I dreamed of Daisy and me building a blanket fort, safe inside our own little world. The next morning, I got a surprise visitor. It was Officer Charlotte, one of the police officers who had been at our house that day, the one who hadn't hugged Trevor. She came with Mr. Barbara. They sat me down and told me they had some questions about the text messages Trevor showed them. Officer Charlotte showed me printouts of the messages. They were from my phone number to Trevor's. In them, I talked about hating Daisy and wanting to hurt her, about how she was ruining our family, about how she didn't belong with us because of her skin color. The words were ugly and hateful, making my stomach turn just reading them. I never wrote these, I said again. I don't even have Trevor's number in my phone. Officer Charlotte raised her eyebrows at that. You don't have your brother's phone number? I shook my head. He never gave it to me, said he didn't want me bothering him. That seemed to interest both of them. They asked me more questions about my phone, when I got it, if Trevor ever used it, if I ever left it unlocked around the house. I told them Mom had given me the phone for my birthday 2 months ago. And yes, I often left it charging in the living room. Anyone could have picked it up. I didn't have a password on it because Mom said I shouldn't have secrets from her. Officer Charlotte and Ms. Barbara exchanged a look. Then Officer Charlotte asked if I would be willing to let them check my phone. I said yes immediately. Anything that might help prove I was telling the truth. Later that day, Mom brought my phone to the facility. Officer Charlotte took it and said their tech person would examine it. I didn't know what that meant, but I hoped it would help. Maybe there was some way they could tell I hadn't sent those messages. 2 more days passed. I started talking to some of the other kids. Most of them had their own sad stories. Kendall, the boy who tried to talk to me before, told me he was there because he got caught stealing food for his little sisters. His mom was sick and couldn't work. I felt bad for judging him before. We sat together at meals now, and sometimes he could even make me laugh with his stories about the stray cats he fed in his neighborhood. On the 5th day, Ms. Barbara came to get me for another meeting. This time, a woman named Virginia was there too. She had curly red hair and wore a bright yellow blouse that seemed way too cheerful for this place. The fluorescent lights made her hair look almost orange against the drab gray walls of the conference room. Ms. Barbara introduced her as my court-appointed guardian ad litem, which she explained meant she was assigned to represent my best interests in court. I just nodded, not really understanding what was happening anymore. My fingers nervously traced the edge of the wooden table as I waited for them to explain why I was there. Virginia had a folder full of papers and a serious expression. Her eyes were kind though, not judging like some of the other adults I'd encountered since this nightmare began. She told me they had found something interesting on my phone. Apparently the tech person discovered that the messages to Trevor weren't actually sent from my phone app. They were sent through some website that lets you fake text messages, then screenshot them to make them look real. She spread out several printouts showing the technical details, but they might as well have been written in another language. But how does that help me? I asked, picking at a loose thread on my sleeve. The blue fabric was starting to fray, just like my nerves. Couldn't I have just used that website myself? Virginia smiled for the first time. Her whole face brightened, and I caught a glimpse of a small dimple in her left cheek. That's the interesting part. The website keeps logs of the IP addresses that access it. The messages were created from a computer at your house during hours when you were at school. We have your attendance records to confirm you were in class when these messages were created. My heart started beating faster, like a bird trying to escape from my chest. So Trevor made them up. I told you. The hope in my voice was almost painful, even to my own ears. Miss Barbara held up her hand. Her silver bracelet jingled softly with the movement. We're still investigating, but this is certainly helpful information. It corroborates parts of your story. They asked me more questions about Trevor, about things he'd said to me over the years, about whether he ever used racial slurs around me before the incident with Daisy. I told them everything I could remember, how he would sometimes mutter things under his breath when we saw black people at the mall, how he had a password on his computer that he never let anyone see, how he had friends that mom didn't like because she said they had bad attitudes. I remembered one friend in particular, a boy named Ethan who had Confederate flag stickers on his truck and always seemed to be angry about something. I also told them about the times Trevor had been nice to me, the ice cream he bought me after I made Daisy cry the first time, the way he'd ruffle my hair and call me his good little soldier, the presents he'd give me for no reason, a new video game, a pair of expensive headphones, always after I'd done something mean to Daisy. I hadn't seen the pattern until now, but laying it all out for Virginia and Ms. Barbara made it painfully clear. After they left, I felt a tiny spark of hope for the first time since this whole nightmare started. Maybe someone would finally see through Trevor's act. Maybe I wouldn't be the only one punished. I sat on my bed, hugging my knees to my chest, and allowed myself to imagine going home, seeing Daisy again, making things right somehow. The next day, I got another visitor. It was my mom's friend Julia, the one who was taking care of Daisy. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Her normally neat brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she kept fidgeting with her wedding ring as she talked. She smelled faintly of baby powder and cinnamon, familiar scents that made my eyes water with homesickness. Daisy misses you, she said quietly. She keeps asking when you're coming home. She made you this. Julia handed me a crumpled piece of paper with colorful crayon scribbles on it. In the center was what looked like two stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. My throat tightened. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. She doesn't hate me? My voice cracked on the last word. Julia shook her head. She's confused. She told me something interesting yesterday. She said Trevor gave her candy once and told her not to tell anyone. He said if she ever told your mom about the things you did to her, he would make sure she got sent away forever. Julia's eyes hardened as she said this, her hands clenching into fists on her lap. I gasped. He threatened her too? The pieces were falling into place. A horrible puzzle I hadn't been able to see while I was in the middle of it. Julia nodded. I've told the police. They're going to talk to her properly, with a specialist who knows how to interview young children, someone who can help her express what happened without leading her or confusing her. We talked for a while longer. Julia told me about how Daisy was doing. She'd been having nightmares but was otherwise adjusting well to staying at Julia's house. She played with Julia's kids, watched her favorite cartoons, and asked about me every day. Hearing this made my chest ache with a mixture of relief and guilt. After Julia left, I felt like my head was spinning. Trevor had been manipulating both of us all along, setting me up to be the villain while he played the hero, making sure Daisy was too scared to tell anyone what was really happening. It was so much more calculated than I had realized. I wondered how long he had been planning this, how many steps ahead he had been thinking. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The thin mattress seemed to grow harder with each passing hour. I kept thinking about all the times Trevor had been nice to me after I was mean to Daisy, all the times he told me I was protecting our family, all the times he made me feel special for doing something that made me feel sick inside. I felt so stupid for falling for it, for not seeing that his approval always came at a price, and that price was hurting Daisy. I remembered one time in particular, about a year ago. Daisy had gotten into my art supplies and ruined a drawing I'd been working on for school. I was upset, but it was clearly an accident. She was only 3 then. Trevor found me crying about it and suggested I teach her a lesson. He convinced me to cut up her favorite stuffed animal, a purple elephant she carried everywhere. The look on her face when she found it still haunted me. Trevor had bought me a new set of expensive markers the next day, telling me I deserved them for standing up for myself. I felt physically ill thinking about it now. The next morning, Officer Charlotte came back with Ms. Barbara. Officer Charlotte's dark hair was pulled back in its usual tight bun, but today she had a small smile on her face. They told me they had interviewed Daisy with a child psychologist present. She had confirmed what Julia told them about Trevor threatening her. She also told them about times when Trevor would pinch her or pull her hair when no one was looking, then blame it on me if she cried. We've also been looking into Trevor's computer, Officer Charlotte said, her voice professional but her eyes showing a hint of disgust. Your mother gave us permission to search his room, and we found some concerning material. They wouldn't tell me exactly what they found, but from their expressions, I could tell it was bad. Ms. Barbara mentioned something about online forums and concerning ideologies. I didn't really understand, but I got the feeling they were finally seeing the real Trevor. The Trevor I had glimpsed in rare, frightening moments when his mask slipped. What happens now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the hope bubbling up inside me. We're going to be having some serious conversations with the prosecutor, Ms. Barbara said. This new evidence changes things significantly. Later that day, I got the best news yet. They were going to let me go home. Not permanently. There would still be a hearing to determine what happened next, but I could stay with my mom under supervision until then. I was so excited I actually hugged Ms. Barbara, which seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised me. Her body stiffened for a moment before she awkwardly patted my back. When Mom came to pick me up, she looked different, more determined somehow. There were new lines around her eyes, and her clothes seemed to hang a little looser on her frame, like she'd lost weight. She hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening." I just cried into her shoulder, relief washing over me like a wave. Her familiar scent of vanilla lotion and coffee enveloped me, making me feel safe for the first time in weeks. The drive home was quiet. The autumn leaves were starting to change, splashes of red and gold against the blue October sky. Mom told me Trevor had been asked to stay with our Uncle Bruce until the investigation was complete. She also said Daisy would be coming home tomorrow. I felt nervous about seeing her again, but Mom assured me that Julia had been talking to her, helping her understand that I had been manipulated by Trevor too. The police found those fake text messages on Trevor's computer, Mom said, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel, along with other things I never would have imagined he was involved with. Her voice cracked slightly. "I feel like I've failed both of you." "You didn't know," I said quietly, watching the familiar streets of our neighborhood come into view. "He made sure you didn't know." Walking into our house felt strange. Everything looked the same. The faded blue couch with the small coffee stain on the left cushion, the family photos on the wall, the stack of mail on the kitchen counter, but it all felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. I noticed a photo of Trevor in his football uniform was missing from the mantel. Mom had taken it down. In its place was a newer picture of just me and Daisy at the park last summer, our faces sticky with ice cream and smiling wide. I went up to my room and stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. My purple bedspread, the posters of my favorite bands on the walls, the bookshelf overflowing with fantasy novels and manga. It seemed like it belonged to a different person now, a girl who hadn't yet learned how easily she could be manipulated into hurting someone she loved. That night, Mom and I had a long talk. She sat on the edge of my bed, stroking my hair like she used to when I was little. The gentle motion was soothing, bringing back memories of bedtime stories and whispered secrets. She told me the police had found a lot of disturbing stuff on Trevor's computer, websites about white supremacy, messages to friends where he talked about Daisy in horrible ways, a diary where he wrote about how he resented me for getting along with Daisy, how he wanted to teach me a lesson. He wrote about how he could control you, Mom said, her voice tight with anger, like it was some kind of game to him. He called it his project, turning you against Daisy. "I should have been stronger," I whispered, tears sliding down my cheeks and soaking into my pillow. "I should have known what he was doing." "You're 12 years old," Mom said firmly. "He's 17 and has been manipulating people for years. This isn't your fault." "I should have seen the signs," Mom said, her voice cracking. "All those years he was hurting you, and I never noticed. I was so busy with work, trying to keep everything together after your dad left." She trailed off, wiping away her own tears with the back of her hand. I shook my head. "Trevor was good at hiding it. He made sure you never saw. He would act completely different when you were around." I remembered how he would transform the moment we heard Mom's car in the driveway, from cold and controlling to the perfect big brother in an instant. We stayed up late talking. Mom told me Trevor wouldn't be going to college this fall as planned. The school had rescinded his acceptance after learning about the investigation. She also said he might be facing juvenile charges for his role in what happened to Daisy, depending on what the prosecutor decided. "What about me?" I asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me. "Will I be in trouble too, for what I did to Daisy?" Mom took my hand. "The situation is complicated. You did hurt Daisy, and that can't be ignored. But the investigators understand that you were being manipulated and coerced. They're taking that into account." I fell asleep that night feeling safer than I had in weeks. Not completely okay. I still felt guilty about what I'd done to Daisy, but at least the truth was coming out. My dreams were still troubled, fragments of memories mixing with fears, but I didn't wake up screaming like I had in the detention center. The next day, Julia brought Daisy home. I was so nervous I hid in my room at first, my stomach in knots. I could hear Daisy's little voice downstairs, asking questions about everything as usual. Her high-pitched chatter floated up the stairs. "Why is that picture gone? Can I have apple juice? When is Sissy coming down?" Finally, Mom called me down. Daisy was sitting on the couch, her legs swinging because they didn't reach the floor. Her dark curls had been recently trimmed, framing her round face. She had a small bandage on her forehead, and I could see fading bruises on her arms. My stomach twisted with shame. I had done that to her. The yellow dress she wore made the bruises stand out even more, a visual reminder of my weakness. "Hi," I said quietly, hovering in the doorway. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Daisy looked up at me, her big brown eyes serious. "Julia says Trevor was being a bad person and made you be mean to me." Her voice was matter-of-fact, the way children often are about difficult truths. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "I'm so sorry, Daisy. I should have been stronger. I should have protected you." My voice broke on the last word. Daisy slid off the couch and walked over to me. For a terrible moment, I thought she might hit me or scream at me. Instead, she took my hand in her small one. Her fingers were sticky sticky with what smelled like apple juice. Trevor was mean to me too. He said scary things when no one was looking. I knelt down to her level, looking into her eyes. I promise I'll never hurt you again, and I won't let anyone else hurt you either. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded solemnly. Okay, can we build a blanket fort now? Just like that, she was ready to move forward. Kids are amazing that way. We spent the afternoon building the biggest blanket fort we'd ever made, stretching from the living room all the way to the kitchen. We used every blanket and sheet in the house, creating a sprawling maze of fabric tunnels and cozy nooks. Mom even crawled in with us for a while, bringing cookies and milk. For a few hours, we pretended everything was normal, that our family hadn't been torn apart and stitched back together in a completely different pattern. The next few weeks were a strange mix of normal and not normal. I had regular visits from Ms. Barbara and sometimes Officer Charlotte. Mom started taking us both to see Dr. Peter twice a week. His office was filled with plants and had a fish tank that Daisy loved to watch. He helped me understand that what happened wasn't entirely my fault, that Trevor had been manipulating me for years, exploiting my need for his approval. What Trevor did is called grooming, Dr. Peter explained during one of our sessions. He was a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard and glasses that always seemed to be sliding down his nose. He systematically broke down your resistance and normalized abusive behavior. This is something predators do very deliberately. But I still chose to hurt Daisy, I argued, staring down at my hands. I knew it was wrong. Yes, you did make choices, Dr. Peter acknowledged, and taking responsibility for those choices is important. But understanding the context doesn't excuse what happened. It helps explain it so you can heal and make sure it never happens again. Trevor stayed at Uncle Bruce's house. Mom went to see him a few times, but she always came back looking sad and tired. She wouldn't tell me much about their conversations, just that Trevor was refusing to take responsibility for his actions. Once I overheard her on the phone with Uncle Bruce, saying something about Trevor blaming everything on liberal brainwashing and claiming he was being persecuted. School was its own challenge. Mom had arranged for me to have a week of home study before returning, but eventually I had to go back. Walking through those doors the first day back was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Whispers followed me down the hallway. Some kids stared openly, while others suddenly found their shoelaces fascinating when I walked by. My former best friend Mackenzie avoided me completely, crossing to the other side of the hallway when she saw me coming. Lunch was the worst. I sat alone at the end of a table, picking at my sandwich while trying to ignore the stares and whispers. I could catch snippets of conversation, hurt her little sister, rasped stuff on her phone, juvenile detention. No one had the full story, but the rumors were bad enough. But there were small kindnesses too. My English teacher, Ms. Winters, asked me to stay after class and told me that if I ever needed a quiet place to eat lunch, her classroom was open. The school counselor, Mr. Davis, checked in with me regularly, and gradually, a few brave kids started talking to me again. Not my old friends, but new ones who either didn't care about the rumors or were willing to hear my side. One day, about a month after I came home, Mom sat Daisy and me down for a serious talk. She explained that there would be a hearing soon where a judge would decide what should happen next. She said we might both need to talk to the judge about what Trevor did. Will Trevor be there? I asked, feeling my heart rate speed up at the thought of seeing him again. My palms grew sweaty, and I wiped them on my jeans. Mom shook her head. No, he'll have a separate hearing. This is just about making sure you both get the support you need. She reached out and squeezed my hand reassuringly. Daisy, who had been coloring quietly beside me, looked up. Is Trevor still a bad guy? She asked, her crayon pausing mid-stroke on her drawing of what looked like a purple cat. Mom hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Trevor has done bad things, and he needs a lot of help to learn how to be better. But right now, it's safer for us if he doesn't live here. Daisy seemed to accept this, returning to her coloring with the intense focus only a 4-year-old can muster. But I saw the sadness in Mom's eyes. No matter what Trevor had done, he was still her son. She was grieving for the person she thought he was, while trying to protect us from the person he had become. The day of the hearing arrived. Mom helped me pick out a nice outfit, a blue skirt and white blouse that made me look older than my 12 years. I stared at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the solemn-faced girl who looked back at me. Daisy wore a yellow dress with little daisies on it, which made her giggle when she looked in the mirror. Look, Mom, daisies for Daisy. Her excitement was a welcome break in the tension of the morning. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble floors and high ceilings that made our footsteps echo. The security guards at the entrance were stern-faced as they checked our bags and waved metal-detecting wands around us. Daisy thought this was a game and kept giggling, which earned her a rare smile from one of the guards. We met Virginia there, who explained what would happen. She said the judge just wanted to talk to us in her office, not in a courtroom. That made me feel a little better. Virginia looked more approachable today in a green dress instead of the bright yellow blouse from our first meeting. She knelt down to Daisy's level and explained in simple terms that we were going to talk to a nice lady who wanted to help us. Judge Peyton was a tall woman with silver hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. Her office had bookshelves covering every wall and a big desk with family photos on it. I noticed one picture of a young woman in a graduation cap and gown, smiling proudly. Judge Peyton spoke directly to me and Daisy, not just to the adults in the room. She asked us questions about how we were doing, about our therapy with Dr. Peter, about how things were at home now. When it was my turn to talk, I told her everything. About Trevor's manipulation, about how I hurt Daisy, about how terrible I felt about it all. My voice shook, but I got through it. I described the way Trevor would praise me after I was mean to Daisy, how he would make me feel special and included when I followed his suggestions. I talked about about the fake text messages, the threats, the gradual way he had shaped my behavior over years. Judge Peyton listened carefully, nodding sometimes and taking notes. Her eyes were compassionate but not pitying. "What do you think should happen now?" she asked me when I finished. She leaned forward slightly, her hands folded on her desk. I hadn't expected that question. I thought for a moment before answering. "I think I should keep seeing Dr. Peter. It helps. And I think Trevor needs help too. Real help, not just punishment." The words surprised me as they came out, but I realized I meant them. Judge Peyton smiled slightly. "That's very mature of you." She turned to Daisy next, asking her simpler questions about how she felt at home now, if she was scared, if she understood what had happened. Daisy, in her 4-year-old wisdom, said, "Trevor is a bad person who made my sister be mean, but she's not mean anymore. She's my best friend again." She beamed at me, revealing the gap where she'd recently lost her first tooth. After the hearing, Judge Peyton issued what she called a disposition order. Virginia explained it to me later as we sat on a bench outside the courthouse. The sun was warm on my face, a contrast to the cold formality inside. I would stay at home with Mom and Daisy, continue therapy, and do community service at an after-school program for younger kids. Trevor would be placed in a juvenile rehabilitation facility for at least 6 months, where he would receive therapy and education. The most important part, though, was that Trevor wouldn't be allowed to contact me or Daisy directly for a long time. If he wanted to come home after his time in the facility, there would be another hearing to determine if it was safe. This news made me feel both relieved and strangely sad. Trevor had been my big brother, my protector, before he became my manipulator. Part of me still missed the person I thought he was. Life slowly started to feel more normal again. I went back to school, though rumors had spread about what happened. Some kids avoided me, whispering behind my back. Others were weirdly interested, asking invasive questions that I refused to answer. My old friends didn't know how to act around me anymore. Mackenzie eventually started saying hello in the hallways, but our friendship was a shadow of what it had been. But I made new friends too. A girl named Winter transferred to our school that fall. She had moved from California and wore clothes that were too light for our Midwestern autumn. She didn't know anything about what had happened, so she just treated me like a normal person. We bonded over both liking the same obscure anime series that none of our other classmates watched. She had blue streaks in her hair and a collection of unusual pins on her backpack. Being around her was like a breath of fresh air. At home, things were different but better. Mom worked less, making sure she was home more often. She had talked to her boss and arranged a more flexible schedule, even though I knew it meant less money. We had dinner together every night, something that rarely happened before. She checked in with both me and Daisy regularly, asking about our days, our feelings, our thoughts. She installed a security system with cameras, which made me feel safer knowing Trevor couldn't just show up unannounced. My community service turned out to be surprisingly rewarding. I helped younger kids with homework and art projects at a community center near our house. At first, I was nervous around the children, afraid I might somehow hurt them. But over time, I realized I was good with kids, patient and creative in ways I hadn't recognized in myself before. There was a little boy named Marcus who reminded me of Daisy, energetic and full of questions. Helping him with his reading became the highlight of my week. Dr. Peter helped me understand the cycle of abuse I had been caught in, how Trevor had been abused by our father before he left, and how he passed that abuse on to me, who passed it to Daisy. Breaking that cycle became my mission. I never wanted to be the person who hurt others again. Hurt people, Dr. Peter told me during one session, but healed people can help heal others. That's the path you're on now. About 4 months after Trevor went to the rehabilitation facility, Mom got a letter from him. She read it privately first, then asked if I wanted to see it. I wasn't sure, but curiosity won out. We sat together at the kitchen table, the envelope between us like a ticking bomb. The letter was short and felt stiff, like he had been forced to write it. The handwriting was recognizably Trevor's, the same angular script that used to appear on birthday cards and Christmas tags. He said he was reflecting on his actions and learning about the harm he had caused. He didn't exactly apologize, but he did say he hoped someday we could have a healthier relationship. I didn't know how to feel about it. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and throw it away. Another part felt a tiny bit of hope that maybe he was actually changing. Mom didn't pressure me to respond, and I decided not to. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet. Maybe not ever. That was something Dr. Peter said was okay. Forgiveness isn't always necessary for healing. Sometimes boundaries are more important than reconciliation. As the months passed, I watched Daisy carefully for signs of lasting trauma. Sometimes she had nightmares, calling out in her sleep. I would hear her small voice from across the hall and go to her room, holding her hand until she fell back asleep. Sometimes she got unusually quiet when certain topics came up, like when a character on TV was mean to their sibling. But mostly, she was resilient in that amazing way kids can be. She made friends at preschool, learned to write her name, and developed an obsession with dinosaurs that had her carrying around a stuffed T-Rex everywhere she went. My own healing was slower, more complicated. I still had days where guilt overwhelmed me, where I couldn't look at the fading scars on Daisy's arms without hating myself. But I had good days too. Days where I felt proud of the person I was becoming, the sister I was trying to be. Winter and I grew closer, spending weekends at each other's houses watching anime and teaching each other to draw in different styles. Her family became a second home to me, a place where no one knew my history or judged me for it. 6 months after Trevor went away, we got notice that he was being released to a halfway house. He would have a strict curfew, mandatory therapy, and still wasn't allowed to contact us directly. Any communication had to go through his caseworker, a man named Benjamin who called Mom regularly with updates. us. Benjamin had a deep, calming voice and always spoke to Mom with respect, never sugarcoating Trevor's progress but never being needlessly harsh either. The news of Trevor's release brought back my anxiety. I started having trouble sleeping again, jumping at small noises in the night. The security system Mom had installed became both a comfort and a reminder of why we needed it. Mom noticed my renewed fear and suggested we take a trip, get away for a while. We went to visit my grandmother in Florida for 2 weeks, swimming in the ocean and eating ice cream every day. It was exactly what we needed. The warm sun and salty air seemed to wash away some of the heaviness we'd been carrying. When we returned, there was another letter from Trevor waiting. This one was different, less formal, more genuine. The handwriting was less rigid, more like the Trevor I remembered from before everything went wrong. He wrote about the therapy he'd been doing, about confronting the anger he'd carried since our father left. He admitted to manipulating me, to setting me up to hurt Daisy. He said he was deeply ashamed of what he had done. This time, the letter included an actual apology, not just to Mom, but to me specifically. He wrote, "I was supposed to protect you as your big brother, but instead I hurt you in ways that will take years to heal. I'm sorry, and I know sorry isn't enough." Reading those words, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. I read the letter 3 times, trying to decide if I believed him. Dr. Peter had warned me that abusers often say what they think others want to hear, but something about this letter felt different from the first one. More raw, less calculated. There were crossed out words and ink smudges, like he had struggled to find the right words. I decided to write back, with Dr. Peter's help. I didn't forgive Trevor. I wasn't ready for that, but I acknowledged his apology. I told him about my therapy, about the community service I was doing. I told him about my new friend Winter, and how I was learning to draw manga. I told him I hoped he was getting the help he needed. It was a start, a tiny bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. As my 13th birthday approached, Mom asked what I wanted to do to celebrate. In the past, birthdays had been small affairs in our house. A cake, a few presents, maybe a movie. But this year felt important somehow, a marker of survival. "I want to have a real party," I said, "with friends from school, and I want to invite Julia and her kids too." We were sitting at the breakfast table, Daisy between us, happily drowning her pancakes in syrup. Mom looked surprised but pleased. "That sounds wonderful. Anyone else?" She reached over to wipe syrup from Daisy's chin. I thought for a moment. The kids from the community center, the ones I work with, and Ms. Barbara and Dr. Peter. I surprised myself with how many people I wanted to include, how many connections I had formed in the months since everything happened. We planned the party together, sending out invitations, ordering a cake, decorating the backyard with streamers and balloons. Daisy was especially excited, running around telling everyone who would listen about my sister's big party. She helped me choose decorations, insisting on purple streamers because it was my favorite color. The day of the party was perfect, sunny but not too hot, with a light breeze that made the streamers dance. Winter came early to help set up, bringing a homemade card that made me tear up a little. It was covered in anime-style drawings of us having adventures together. The kids from the community center arrived in a group, chaperoned by their program director. They presented me with a collage they had made, photos of all of us together surrounded by colorful drawings. Marcus had drawn a picture of me helping him read, with "thank you" written in careful block letters. Miss Barbara came, looking strange in casual clothes instead of her usual pantsuit. She brought a gift wrapped in silver paper, a journal with a lock and key. "For your thoughts," she said simply. Dr. Peter brought his dog, a friendly golden retriever that Daisy immediately fell in love with. She spent half the party throwing a tennis ball for him to fetch, shrieking with laughter every time he brought it back. Julia arrived with her 3 toddlers who made a beeline for the snack table. She hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm proud of you." As I looked around at everyone gathered in our backyard, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Pride. Not the twisted kind Trevor had instilled in me for hurting Daisy, but real pride in the connections I had built, the person I was becoming. The yard was filled with laughter and conversation, people who knew my story and cared about me anyway. Mom brought out the cake, 13 candles blazing. It was chocolate with purple frosting, decorated with anime characters that Winter had helped Mom design. Everyone sang happy birthday, their voices blending together in the afternoon sun. As I took a deep breath to blow out the candles, I made a wish. Not for anything material, but for continued healing. For Daisy, for Mom, for myself, even, in a complicated way, for Trevor. The candles went out in one breath and everyone cheered. As Mom started cutting the cake, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Benjamin, Trevor's caseworker. He had sent a simple message. "Trevor asked me to wish you a happy birthday. He hopes you're having a good day." I stared at the message for a long moment, a mix of emotions swirling through me. Anger, confusion, a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. Then I put my phone away and rejoined the party. Today was about celebrating how far I'd come, not dwelling on the past. There would be time to figure out my feelings about Trevor later. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Daisy tugged on my hand. Her face was smeared with chocolate frosting, and her yellow dress had a new purple stain down the front. "Was this the best birthday ever?" she asked, her eyes wide and earnest. I smiled and knelt down to wipe her face clean with a napkin. "Yeah, it really was." That night, after everyone had gone home and Daisy was asleep, Mom and I sat on the porch swing together. The yard was still decorated, though many of the balloons had deflated and the streamers hung limply in the evening stillness. Fireflies blinked in the growing darkness, like stars come down to earth. "I'm proud of you," Mom said quietly. "You know that, right?" I nodded, leaning my head on her shoulder. "I know." The swing creaked gently beneath us, a comforting sound from my childhood childhood. You've been through so much, but you're still so compassionate, still trying to do the right thing. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the swing creaking gently beneath us. Finally, I asked the question that had been on my mind all day. Do you think Trevor will ever come home? Mom sighed, her arm tightening around my shoulders. I don't know, honey. That depends on a lot of things. His progress in therapy, the recommendations of his doctors, and most importantly, whether you and Daisy would feel safe. I don't think I'd feel safe yet, I admitted. Maybe someday, but not now. Then not now, Mom said firmly. Your safety comes first, always. As we went inside, I thought about how much had changed in less than a year, how close I had come to becoming someone I would have hated, how easily Trevor had manipulated me into hurting someone I loved, but also how resilient people could be, how relationships could heal, even after terrible damage. I wasn't naive enough to think everything was fixed. I knew we all had a long road ahead of us. There would be more therapy sessions, more difficult conversations, more moments of doubt and fear. But for the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Mom, Daisy, and me. A real family, looking out for each other. As I got ready for bed, I looked at the new journal Miss Barbara had given me. I opened it to the first blank page and began to write. Not about Trevor or the past, but about the party. About Winter and Marcus and Dr. the Peter's dog. About Daisy's chocolate-smeared face and Mom's proud smile. About the person I was becoming, one day at a time.